What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. It reemerged. It, I think, made a lot of people very happy. Even the release year, I would say, is still not the worst thing of all time. And it was probably, at least in my opinion, it was probably the biggest thing at the Nintendo Direct. They crushed it. I mean, they had a lot of announcements at the Nintendo Direct. But to have this show up, to give it a new name, right? You just have like a subtitle there. To have actual gameplay, right? Not only do you get a trailer, but it's spliced in with a couple of, it seems like very early gameplay sections. And then you get the release year. I mean, I don't know if it's everything we always wanted, but I mean, thank the Lord that it's actually coming. And I never lost hope. Nintendo is probably the company I make the least amount of videos on across all of the channels. So they definitely get the least love, but they make some incredible games. Obviously, we have known about Metroid Prime 4 for forever. I've never lost hope, although, we've never really discussed it. I always believe in games that have like a 10-plus year development cycle. Skull and Bones, Metroid Prime, One Day Beyond Good and Evil 2. I believe in these games. So I never thought it was canceled or anything. And the one thing that I would say actually surprised me about this, and one big part that I want to talk about in this video, well, it is the year, right? So they say 2025. I don't think that made people upset. It was kind of, I would say it seemed obvious if you were going to show it. For it to come out in the fall would seem wild to me. So I never really expected that, right? So 2025. Now, the thing with that, though, is it looked like a Switch game. I think it was running on the Switch, but is this a cross-platform type game? Is this going to be on the next Switch? I cannot imagine it's not. And I guess the question is, well, you wouldn't probably drop it, right, from the Nintendo Switch, so let's just call it one. It would have to release probably simultaneously. So does it get held back in terms of the release date by the next Switch console, right? To me, although it was very exciting to actually see the game, I'm a guy who looks at release dates, right? Looks at the future. The number one thing that I think of now with this game is, will it come out on the next Switch console, and does it have to wait for that Switch console? Because then, instead of releasing in January or February, does it have to release in June, July? I mean, if the Switch 2 gets delayed to like the fall, does it have to come out there? I want this thing as soon as humanly possible. And I think that, it sometimes comes off very selfish, for somebody to say that, but we've been waiting on this game for almost a decade. I don't actually think it's all that unreasonable to say, can you just give us this game as soon as possible? I also wonder how far along it was kind of like the entire time, and maybe that's like a weird way of saying it, but they announced that it was in development, I believe, 7 or so years ago, right? And you see it now, and like it looks good. It looks good, and I think it showed us what it needed to, right? You get the gameplay snippets, you get the trailer, you get a little bit of story content there, and then you peace out, right? It has the epic kind of entrance from Samus. Like, that's really all you need, right? And it reminds people, I think, of when they're starting to, remaster these older Metroid Prime games. But, like, what I noticed, and I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like at least the gameplay part to the trailer, and maybe just the entire trailer in general, but the gameplay felt to me like it was like the first level, like right at the beginning of the game, and it actually felt like each part to the trailer, like every time it would cut itself and end up in a new area, it still felt like it was kind of the beginning of the game. So, and I don't know that for sure. Don't know that for sure, but it just felt very early on, and I don't know if that was like a pre-planned thing or, heaven forbid, like that's all they have. I don't think that's even possible, right? But the question would be like, why did it take them so long? There's always been rumors that like they've just been sitting on this game for years, and Nintendo does do that. Nintendo makes games, sits on them, lets them sit there for, at times, 6 to 12 months, maybe even longer than that. It's not crazy to believe that Metroid Prime was done a few years ago, maybe like 1 or 2 years ago, and they just held it off. But on the flip side of things, coming out when it's coming out and potentially being on both consoles makes me think that's not true. But then it's like, well, what have you been doing for 7 years? Like, were there issues? Did you actually start 7 years ago? Or, or maybe you did the announcement, you said you are, but you really didn't kick it into high gear until maybe a year or two after, so maybe the game's only been in development for 5 years. Those are kind of the questions that I like to think about. I know not everybody cares. I think that's very, very fair. But the game looks great. I think if there was ever a game, I think Metroid Dread already kind of did this, but Metroid historically has always been like that game for Nintendo that's been like critically well received. Everybody loves it. Everybody loves Metroid that's played it, right? But they've never really sold. And that's like a well-known fact, right? Now, Metroid Dread, I do believe, kind of broke that. But I do wonder if this game takes that even another step after Dread, right? And becomes just this massive, enormous thing. Or does it maybe settle back down? I find it very hard to believe it would settle back and drop from Metroid Dread, just because I feel like excitement is at an all-time high. I feel like even just delivering this game is kind of an achievement at this point. And I feel like you'd have a lot of people that you actually won over with Dread that, a different kind of style, but, would jump over and play this game. So I think this game would be kind of a slam dunk, and would be a really, by the way, if they're looking for like a launch game, that you could play on both, you could still just get on the Switch. But if you're looking for a launch game that you want to kind of bundle in, or, it's the must-play game for the Switch too, Metroid might, besides like a Mario Kart, that one's like a slam dunk. Just give us a new Mario Kart. But beyond that, I think Metroid would be a really good one as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.